Hey guys, welcome to the Limitation is a Mirage podcast. On this episode, I have another superhuman guest in Sean Connolly. I met Sean many moons ago as a martial artist, and as we got to know each other, I discovered that he did a lot more. It was to applied psychology, kinesiology, anything to do with the body. I did a martial arts massage course with you, actually, it just popped into my head a few years back. You work with coaches and dancers and performers and anyone who wants to improve their mental capacity to be better at their sport, I suppose, would be the layman's, like the lowest level of it. So, for anyone that doesn't get what I just said, do you want to give a higher overview of that, please? And welcome to the show.
Well, a bit like you, Liam, I'm a problem solver.
Yes.
Most athletes and performing artists will train for thousands of hours, days, weeks, months, and years. But many of them, when it comes to performing under pressure, they just can't deal with it. They've no emotional intelligence, and they're not aware of how the emotions are just energy and motion through the nervous system that
Mhm.
can suppress their potential, what they've trained for, which is quite sad. And as you know yourself, easy fixed. So
Yeah.
it's really just tweaking that at the end for them and giving them a blueprint where they can go away and have it for the rest of their life, you
I
know?
think whenever, in my experience working with athletes and stuff, is that they get so focused in the art that they're doing, whatever it is, whether it's dance or whatever, that they forget they still have their psychological side of it, like normal stuff. I remember working with a client that didn't want to challenge for the belt because he didn't want to speak on camera, but it wasn't even aware that that was a problem, and that was what was
Yeah.
actually holding them back. So whenever you're, how do you teach? Is teach the right word? How do you show them that actually they're holding themselves back, and it is just an emotional intelligence problem and not a
I
massive one
think
that they've made it?
because I always say it's better felt than dealt. When I'm running any workshops, I'll always get, like, I was taking a couple of senior hurling teams there and senior camogues team down in Dublin. And the first thing I do is I measure all their personal best sprints, endurance, power jumps, press ups, anything. If they want to lift weights, if it's CrossFit, and then show them how they can smash it on the day after the first hour. Really, they can
Yeah.
smash their personal best. Um, if it's individual, again, is giving them that and then giving them, okay, this is what you have been doing. Many of them will sabotage the results and actually uh, get less results when you do the same exercises just by putting in some negative emotions,
Hmm.
which most people will put in before the event. They all say that, they put all this practice in, they put their life into it, but the last bit of preparation is anxiety, fear, and self-doubt.
Yeah.
And I think it's normal, but
Yeah.
it will be normal to have the adrenaline running, but it's back to that emotional intelligence. What's going on in here? What are the results it's going to give me? And how are you going to replace it and stop fighting with it? Because you'll see people yourself, Liam, and they've been fighting with fear or low self-esteem for years.
Yeah, they almost get into their sport to hide it. At least I'm good at this.
Yeah.
And then when they're good at that, they forget that it all, like I try to explain to the guys that I would have worked with, when you go into the gym, I know there's a whole saying like leave your ego at the door and all this stuff, but you technically you're still taking it with you. You're still developing all these skills within the gym. So if you can take them inside and outside, it's going to make a massive difference. Like to the run up to the competition, because you can just fly through, and like you said, then the competition's next week. I'm starting to get nervous, start to have anxiety, start to have self doubt, and then you land, and I didn't really perform at my best. You're like, well, that's because
Yeah.
you weren't performing it. I think so. How do you teach them to realize that they're not performing at their best? Because in my experience, they would have come back and said, I don't know what happened. I just wasn't performing. And I'm like, well, do you normally be anxious and freaking
I'm
out?
laughing because that's a regular email you would get, isn't it?
Yeah,
I usually get a life story of somebody, and then,
yeah,
but when it comes to the big competitions, we don't know what happens.
yeah.
But they think they're the only person in the world going through that, whereas everybody does it. I
Hmm.
wish I'd have known this stuff when I was younger, when I boxed.
Yeah. I was lucky when I competed. My my master didn't really settle for I'm a bit nervous or afraid. It was kind of a case of get in there and end this. And you're like, you're more afraid of what he was going to say than going
Yeah,
into the opponent. So
it's
I was
it's
lucky in that regard that it was overridden by different fear. I didn't want to come off the mat and tell him, "Oh, I didn't really do my best." Like he just wanted you to do your best, but the way he put it across was get out, get out and get that done. So
it
again,
is
that's not.
it's amazing the coaches, the many different coaches in this. Even I'm sure you've came across some yourself. Some of the older coaches in sport, if you mention sports psychology or anything that we do, they'll go, "Ah, load of nonsense," never had it in my day. But they're actually using it. They've
Yeah.
developed their own strategies, and they're very, very good at it. But it's just they've framed it in a different way. You know, I remember young boxer Neanderthals. He was a friend of mine, his son, and he had a flu on him. Shouldn't have been down there, but he was boxing anyway in the finals. And he says he was feeling very weak and he didn't know whether to get in. And I had a chat, done a session with him for about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and he done really well. And his grandfather, who was an ex-Olympian, and actually um, first Olympian from here, first to beat a Cuban in the Olympics. But he says to me, "Well, what were you saying to him?" He says, "Because I've never seen him fight like that before." He says, "He went out there and he says, oh, just a wee bit of sports psychology." Ah, you'd have been better tell him about the birds and the bees.
Yeah.
so, but they're brilliant, as I say, and you learn so much off the old coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the knowledge they have.
I used to do it even, people used to ask me, how come you always land a class? When I used to go up to Tom's, they'd be like, how come you always land a class so early? And I'd be like, because there's other classes on that I can see. If I'm traveling this far, I'm going to try to learn. And then I'd
Yes,
watch the before class, then I'd watch him teach, and then I would do my session, and then I would watch the after. So I might be there 3 hours, but I'm only getting up once a week. And people are like, you spend a
yes,
while at a time there. And I'm like, well, not really. And I'm trying to absorb, how is he making that kid who couldn't do that a minute ago do that? How did you? And I'd asked it, like, when the next day when he's like, when I'm on my session, anybody got any questions? And I'm asking questions like, how did you, that wee kid couldn't do that double leg? And then you said son, and then he did do the double leg.
yeah.
What's happening there? But I love that idea of when you're chatting to them, even though the proof's there, they've seen it. Ugh. The best thing I've ever heard is,
Tom's a phenomenal coach, and he's
uh,
well versed in psychology and
mm-hmm,
philosophy, Eastern philosophies. As you know, me and my friend Peter would have helped him for a lot of his fights,
yeah,
and some of the stuff he came up, he was very, very creative in his methods for preparing for pain and hardship,
mm-hmm,
and staying focused under it, which a lot of people, and back in the day, it wasn't as big as it was now. Even a lot of the sparring partners were far later than him. But so he always reminded me of that old saying. You see it in the boxing gyms, the more you sweat in the gym, the less you bleed in the ring. And that was Tom. And
yeah,
again, he's a classical example of somebody who eats and sleeps his work. And one of those rare coaches who does care about the person in there who's coached. It's not all about the winning. It's about them developing themselves and not being damaged.
yeah. I think that's what attracted me to coaches like him and yourself. Like we met a few times before we started to interact. Like I met you and Peter a few times, and it's for me it was always about being a martial artist and not doing martial arts. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
for people that don't know, the difference is when I started, I was doing martial arts. I just wanted to learn kick and punch and flying kick and flying punch, and then I wanted to learn to live the life of it. I wanted to be a martial artist. Like, and that idea of knowing that there's going to be pain and struggle and sacrifice, but prepping yourself for it. Do you think that is something that's overlooked in a lot of people's performances? Like, I know you work with dancers and hurling and sport. You basically work
I
with
think all
sport.
sports and all arts are great for giving us life lessons.
Mhm.
Like I popped down to the World Championships, the Waterfront Hall, just to see a lot of the coaches from Canada and America I'd worked with over the years, and was saying to one of them, because I met a couple of girls who had retired. They were, I think some of them was in life lessons that they've taken away. And in all sports you're learning, you get out of it what you put into it. One of the ways, maybe underperform or things don't go your way. You've the loss that they deal with, the counselor supporter for the rest of the team. I think the lessons that they take into life itself. Any ex-athletes I know who are at a high level, if they go into business, they do really well in their careers because they've been programmed at a young age. Rugby, I always loved rugby. It can be a bit like life at times where you're trying to go that way, and there's a load of people trying to hammer you and stop you going that way. So you need that support behind you. And again, it doesn't matter who you are. I think we get a bit lost at times and think it's all us. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. But there's never any sort of avenue in life where you're not relying on the support of other people. I think that's very important.
You would see that in like sport like MMA. People be like, but it's just you in the ring or the cage or whatever. And you're like, but it's not just you getting there. Like, and technically you're not
your coach, your supporters, your family, your friends. And I think just personally, like as I say, I grew up in boxing and I coached it that then before I went into 10 in the Premontis. But a lot of my friends, I grew up with boxing, and a lot of them were international in life, and a lot of them ended up drinkers and other problems. And I think that was having that mentality that I need to push through these. When you retire from a sport, if it's been your life, then you've took away your recognition, your sense of achievement, and who a lot of people think, who am I? Yeah, what have I got now? And some of them do find it hard to settle into society again, but they're thinking, well, I'll just fight this. I'll keep my head down. I'll keep punching through life. You need that support around you, and that's fatal. Even I think I told you that I've started this journey in musculoskeletal therapies, but it was actually 22 years ago today that I lost my youngest brother through suicide, and that's what drove me down this avenue. And I've always preferred to work with the teenagers and that through sport and activities. They don't want to be lectured to about mental health, but if we can give them, as all coaches, if we can give them the resilience and that support, then it's gonna help them have a better life and avoid that, because a lot of kids who aren't into sports or activities like that, and they're not building resilience, they're constantly stressed, and then if they don't believe they have the ability to get out of that stress eventually will stop just coming and going, it stays. So then they're in the hypertonic stage of anxiety. And you can only hold anxiety for so long till apathy sets in, when they burn out, the adrenals are burnt out, and that's the growing ground for depression. So I think all sports are fantastic, all arts. I love them all. I think everybody should, and as you said, your martial arts becomes a part of who you are. It's like your daily dance, it is you. Nobody can take it away from you. People would say to me when I used to fly to America and Canada a lot to deliver the workshops, and you spent most of your time in airports and in hotels on your own, like Mr. Bean. But they say to me, never bored. I'm never bored. I always have my forms, my breathing, my qigong. I'm always learning things, and it just becomes your life, doesn't it?
You can always, I'd always say to people in the airports and stuff too, like you can always find somewhere in an airport to practice. There's always a space somewhere. People are sitting.
The bathroom.
I used to just go and wander about, and then I'd find a wee space and I would just practice, and the people passing you by, but nobody's paying any attention. Like they're doing their thing and they're just as bored. And like I remember doing it on a beach, and eyes closed, loving life, doing a wee bit of Tai Chi, and open my eyes, and there's about 12 people there. Like, And my
Yeah.
automatic reaction was not to shy away. Do you want to join me? And about
Yes.
six of them did some qigong with me. I was like, I'll just show you something simple. And we just had a wee
Yeah.
class on the beach. The other six, which I found very weird, and I did ask them, they wouldn't join in, but they would stand and watch. And I was like, well, just breathe with us. No, I'll just watch. I'm like, well, you're
Mm.
breathing anyway. Why not do something that might develop you in some way?
That's what I'm
Um,
saying. Has that ripple effect, doesn't it? Because you could have showed them six strangers about a qigong. You don't know them. You might never see them again. But maybe one of them was on their way down that road of depression or
mhm.
something else. But so you've given them, they might think, oh God, this is interesting. I'll go to a class, begin to develop themselves mentally, physically. And that's what we call it's life changing, isn't it? You've just
Yeah,
changed the whole direction of the future.
it's one of
And
the things
that's
I loved about doing magic and street hypnosis. I never was a strict magician who just wanted to cause wonderment. I wanted to cause internal wonderment. I wanted them to go, well, if I can think like that for this,
yeah,
what can I think about for myself? And that's what I used to love. I'd meet people like down the line and they'd go, you know what, remember that day you did that card trick and the card, whatever happened? I thought about that and then I started reading up on like psychology and persuasion and body language. And now because of that, I'm getting on better with my parents or my partner or at work or whatever. And so like you said, that's that almost random act of kindness, but a bit deeper because you know what you're doing and there's a lot more
yeah.
to it so you can ripple it out. So say if somebody was listening to this now and they because we haven't made it clear yet, who is it that you would work with? Like what would it if I was just coming to you for a session now, how would that look?
Well, it's looking at your objective for the session, why you coming, are you in some sort of pain that you're trying to move away from, some sort of emotional pain? Or is there something that you want to move towards because you believe it's going to take you away from that?
Mm,
Most people, as I said earlier, we're problem solvers. And I always am very clear to people, I'm not giving you anything. Everything you need, you already have. I've just been trained in principles and theories and the practice of showing you where they are.
hmm. That's
There's
lovely.
nobody, I truly believe in that. It's one of the commandments of NLP, isn't it?
Hmm.
Nobody's broke. Nobody needs fixed. We all get stuck. And I think as coaches and therapists, we have to remember that. And everybody that sits in front of me, I always see the end result. It's like it's one of my favorite analogies is the eagle's egg rolling into the farm, and it hatched and it grew up with the chickens, and it believed it was a chicken. And a lot of people in life uh, walk about, they're eagles, but they believe they're chickens. And if you could give them that we taste, that experience that there's something more in there, just put a seed in their mind, and develop that curiosity, because isn't that how we learn? Curiosity.
Yeah,
Well, as kids, what's that, why?
I still do that.
Yeah. So it's and then you've given the tools, and a lot of them you'll never see again. Like even in the dance world, I've worked with way over 10,000 dancers, a lot of them very elite, and great musicians and that. And what you've given them has changed their life. It's changed their whole self-perception, their level of self-esteem, confidence, self-drive, and it will be life-changing. They mightn't see it. A lot of parents, the teachers won't see it. A lot of teachers don't care. They just want their wins,
Yeah.
you know. But as long as we know that, we know the science behind it, and it's as I explained to them, I'm just giving you the light switch. I'm showing you where the light switch is. You don't need to know how to wire up this room. You don't need to know about electricity. I can give you a light switch and just keep hitting it and you'll keep getting the light.
Hmm. Yeah. I love that. It's making the complex simple. So like I would teach a lot of wee techniques and like I can teach you the science behind this, how it works, how it connects, everything. Or I can teach you how to do it and it'll do the job for you. Like you said, like the light switch. Like nobody goes around going, no, but I really need to
Yeah.
know how that works before I press it. So just having that understanding that if they have the techniques and they just work towards it, then they can they can further develop. So the emotional side of it, I get a lot of that where like I get a lot of clients that don't understand their emotions, don't know how to deal with their emotions, and I think almost don't believe they can control their emotions, for want of a better term. How would you interact with someone that's coming to you and they're like emotionally, they tell you, because this is the way that they've always worded it to me, I'm emotionally damaged.
Sorry, Liam, this is sticking. I don't know if it's your side or mine. Just
Uh,
stuck a wee bit there. Um, well, it's actually one of the first things that it'll do with a client is they'll take them through the emotional scale. Because when you speak about emotions of the mind, a lot of people just don't know what you're speaking about. It's like talking about the wind because you can't see it. And I find too that even in this time, there's two
you
the
fro-
doctor,
you
there's
froze
doctor
there
up
a wee
there.
bit. I
You
need
hear me now? Yeah.
I can hear you now. Yeah, you froze a wee bit there at
So
after the wind.
I was up in Ulster University, and I was speaking to the doctor that teaches the sports psychology degrees up there, and I was showing him my work because, as you know, I put a lot of this just and like yourself, you put your own work and your own experiences together, and you develop your own system. And I wanted to know what it was because I was asked to go up there and take part in in a sports degree, a sports psychology degree. So I went up and spoke to him, and he started laughing, and he says, "Why would you do that?" He says, "I know you and I know your work." He says, "I actually read one of your books," and I says, "Will you look at my work and tell me what it is?" So, or what you think it is, your perception. So I done it up on his whiteboard for him. And he says, "You've took advanced psychology and you've simplified it for children." He says, "I've never seen that done before." And he says, "But I don't know the last, but I don't know what you're talking about there." And it was all to do with the hypnosis work, you know.
Yeah.
And so we'll get into the conversation with applied kinesiology, and I started doing some of the muscle tests and stuff. And then I started when I got one wee you'll get muscles to switch off, like blowing a fuse. I got one, and then I started saying, "Oh yeah," and that's connected to, so say it was subscapularis, heart meridian, related to small intestine, the quads, and so I got him into a yes set, Liam. Yeah, and I started switching off loads of muscles.
Yeah.
And I've done this a lot. I've done it with professional dancers who couldn't get off the floor. They actually believed I'd switched their whole body off just by starting with one suggestion. They become compliant and say yes, you know. And then I tell them it's all rubbish. I made it up. Get off the floor. Don't ever let anybody do that in your life again. You know, because it's happening, as you know,
Yeah.
it's happening every day. But that's when I decided to push it a bit more and pass it on, because I want, especially in the dance world, that's why I started teaching ex-dancers and dance teachers, because there's only one of me, and there's other fields I'm focusing on at the minute, and I'd love to, I just didn't want to walk away from it after 20 odd years. I wanted to pass it on. So I'll be happy that there's still competent teachers out there teaching these methods. There's thousands of kids coming through their classes every year, so they could be passing on the Dancing Minds program to them
That's
and
brilliant.
giving them, make them a champion in school, but in the dance school, but it'll make them feel like a champion the rest of their life. And
Yeah.
that's what it's supposed to be about, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's we would be in the same vein. We started coaching people because we wanted to help people, and then at some
Mm-hmm.
point you realize there's only so many people I can help. But if I start to coach coaches, then their ripple effect, and I have people that I've coached years ago still come back to me when they get a complicated issue, and they'll come back and they'll be like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, did you try this?" And then, "Oh, fuck, I forgot about it. Let me go back."
Yeah,
And then they go
yeah.
back. Just to go back, I love because I do the same thing, like sticking people's feet to the floor or their hands or whatever. They forget their name and then they do it, and then I'd be like, "This is all nonsense. This is in your head." And if you can let me get in and do that, what are you letting the stuff do when you're not aware? Let's start to get our
Mm,
awareness up here, start to pay attention. Just like you're saying, like you put them you switch the muscles off. Like even before, whenever I was doing magic, before I knew hypnosis, I knew kinesiology and I knew the body, how the body works. So I used to talk about mobile phones being so full of negative vibes that it'll mess your balance up. And I get
Mhm.
people to hold it to the ear and try to balance and try to strengthen their arm, and they'd be all weak.
Yeah.
And then I'd get the phone away and do the same thing, and you'd be like, "This is, this is all in your head. This is just body position." Which leads me to: do you think the fact that you know so much about the body, the meridians, the everything, the way the body works and how it interacts with words and feelings, that makes you a better coach or a better therapist?
Um, well, it's nice to look at the whole person, and you can't really separate them, as you know. If you're in physical pain, it's going to affect you emotionally. If
Mm,
you're in emotional pain, high levels of stress and anxiety, your body won't even assimilate the nutrition from the food. Plus, you're suppressing the immune system, which will lead to down the line a suppressed immune system. It's open season for disease in the body, then, isn't it?
yeah,
So, but to me, the submind is everything. Even when people are in and on their first session, I will always check to see what's the subconscious doing here, and is there any parts that's interfering with this, what I'm going to do? Because I think a lot of the sort of conventional therapies, if they're like psychology, psychiatrists, they're not really looking at the subconscious mind, and it drives the bus, as you know. It's
yeah,
88% of the total mind. It won't analyze and cause terrible diseases, a horrible life for people, a suppressed life. But it's so easy to get in and just tweak it around. That working, I call it bringing the baby on board. As I say, it's like a 3-year-old child analytically.
yeah.
So let's bring the baby on board, whatever your goals are in the future here. Um, that's my perception of it. So even when people are, and you see it a lot in sport, people say they're confident they're going to do this and do that, and then when you check with a sub mind, it's going the other way.
Yeah. And they're still wondering why it's not. I don't know why it hasn't worked because I really believe I can do it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
let's check that. It doesn't seem like you believe it.
yeah,
Not all the time. You're like, well,
yeah.
that's different. So, like, I would find it like people we're great at hiding from ourselves, even though we are ourselves. But we're great at going. Like, I know whenever I had anxiety in the past, because I was a martial artist and stuff, I was like, I shouldn't have this. So nobody can know I have this
Mm.
because I'm supposed to be this like big hardy man who does like kung fu and all. And like, and then when you go into competition or you go in to even teach a big group, party believes, well, I can do this because you know you can, but like the wee anxiety part's going, maybe you can't actually though. Maybe that's why you have anxiety because this isn't. And because I
Yeah.
wasn't looking at that, I was trying to run away from it. It just,
It's the imposter syndrome, people call
yeah,
it, isn't it?
aye. So
And I think everybody, especially as therapists, you have to work on yourself a lot.
yeah,
You have to not take on board. At the start, I think for new coaches, they take on everybody's problems, don't they? And I
hmm
know I did at the start, getting into therapies, and you're getting home and you're worrying about. I've met doctors and all who do that, and just totally burnt out.
yeah,
And you can't do that. You have to develop that other side of the self, where you switch off, you do your best, and then you wash your hands of it. That's it.
hmm
You can't do more than your best. But no, definitely. Even I remember I took the Ulster tennis squads, and the GB coach was over, one of the GB coaches, and we're watching them halfway through it, and she says to me, "What do you think of a man who?" She says he was a sports psychologist in London, and he took a lot of my players from earning like 7 grand a year to 3 million a year. They improved so much. He done a lot of corporate work, and then he took his own life. She says, "How can that happen?" I says, "Well, it's just a simple example of somebody who doesn't work on themselves.
hmm
They're busy working with other people,
yeah,
but they're not practicing what they preach.
hmm
You have to. I think getting into the danger zone that you know everything, you don't need it, and you don't have to be consistent in your practice. Like martial arts, how many people's online now who put themselves in a pedestal as a master, grandmaster, that don't spar, that don't train, and then they're challenged by some young guy and he beats them up on video. But it's their ego, isn't it? The big
Yeah.
ego, the
Aye.
shadow self.
And the problem with that as well is people get to the point where they know what to do and how to do it, and because they're not doing it, it's almost even worse then. Why
Yeah.
do I feel like shit? Well, why am I not doing all the stuff I would tell? Because I know I would do it. I would sit and I would say to myself, like I journal a lot, so I'm able to recap my week and stuff. But I would sit down and go, what would you do if you were a client? And if anyone ever passed the room, you would hear me talking to myself, and I visualize myself in front of myself, and I just talk. What would you do if you were a client? Tell me what you're going through, blah 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 blah. And then I'd ask the questions, and then I respond back.
Like
And it's
Gestalt
funny.
therapy.
Hmm?
Gestalt therapy.
My version,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
version of
Similar.
it. Yeah.
Similar, but all good tools. And again, what you're doing there, you're working directly with your subconscious. It doesn't know that you can't do that. It doesn't know, a lot
Yeah.
of the stuff that we do in hypnosis. That's where the placebo effect comes in. And wasn't it? I can't remember many years ago now. It must be maybe 10. The American government gave $5 billion research money to 6 professors of medicine to study the placebo.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are good at reversing it using the nocebo,
Yeah.
negative suggestions, and negative hypnosis every day that they're practicing with themselves.
Like I would find that a lot. And one of my questions to people is always, do you have a good imagination? No, I don't. What did you think about before you came in here? Well, I was thinking it was going to be scary, and you might be a bit like I'd have to answer questions I didn't like. So you did use your imagination. You just used it negatively. So you have a good imagination. It's just used wrong. Let's try to get it more positive. And the idea of taking on the problems, I just want to bring that back up because it's funny. I worked with loads of masters and gurus and shamans and everyone under everything and studied everything. And it was actually my mum that pointed that out to me. I crashed one day and I was just feeling completely shit. And I said to him, I was like, I have 2 clients this evening. I can't. And it was mum. Do you ever notice that whenever you work really hard and you've lots of clients in a week, you crash?
Mm.
And then I was like, no, but I must look into that. Had a conversation with myself, and I wasn't even just working with them. I was getting in there, feeling it, and you're like, oh, you're taking this home.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. Let's.
Very, very common. Very common.
Yeah.
And then some people don't. It depends on your personality.
But it can be trained, like, because I don't know. Like
because look at there's lots of people out there have been struck off, for really, frauding people as well, and they're so cold about it. They don't feel much,
Yeah.
So it depends on, and that's another thing. I done a couple of courses over lockdown, like many people, and one of them was on the personalities. The personality that you're born into, and starting looking at the shadow self, which I would use with all my clients now. And when you
Shadow
look back
self
on it,
is your ego, just for people that don't know.
yeah, it's these deep compulsions that we have, and some people have a compulsion to help others, but they can overhelp. They can give too much themselves away. So it's like they're given from the root, not the fruit of the tree, and the tree will die. Yeah. So it's about balance, isn't it? I suppose everything in life is balance, and the only way to learn that is through practice.
Yeah.
You become a better coach through practice, like a better athlete, a better musician. There's no shortcuts, and a lot of people will do it. I even see people advertising, all the big gurus, become a life coach in 2 days. You know what I mean? And
$7.
You could go through a book in 2 days, but where's your clients? Where's your experience? And it becomes dangerous then. There's people I wouldn't even see or touch. I just refer them,
Yeah.
And you know yourself, there's certain people, unless you speak to their doctor, you don't work with them.
Yeah. And That's one of the things I really like about you as a coach is that you're the same as myself. We've been in this a long time, not to show our age, but we're in a long time and we're always trying to learn and still willing to turn down a client. Like I've chatted to coaches and they're saying about this crazy situation they're in with a client and it's a real challenge for me. And I'm like, it doesn't sound like it's for you. It doesn't sound like you should be. Have you ever worked with this type of thing before? Have you spoke to their doctor? Have you interacted with their family or anything to find out what's really going on? They're like, no, I'm just taking it on as a challenge. You're like, that's ego coaching there. That's fucking
Yeah,
what happens when you lose that challenge.
yeah.
That's the problem. And I know it's one of the hardest things to do, but to tell a client, I don't think like I've had experiences in the past where they've come in with say when I was doing just the hypnotherapy and it'd be like, I just want to quit smoking. And we chat for about 20 minutes and I'm like, hold on a minute. Smoking's the front problem, but that's not what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm right coach for you. I know people that I can send you to. And just having that conversation, like
Mm.
it's really hard to do it with them. But for me, I'm like, it's better for them in the long run
Yeah,
that they work
the
with.
more the more history and background you can get, the better, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even with a lot of hands-on therapists now,
Hmm.
you're straight in. They don't take a history.
Yeah.
When the injuries occur, if it's happened before, who have you seen? Not straight on, bump, 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 money out,
Yeah.
and it becomes just a quick turnover like McDonald's,
I
and they're
I
missing
work
so many problems.
I worked with a client, kinesiology client that came in and he had been to other people and stuff and he was right and old and we were having the discussion and he was saying, God, they don't normally have this discussion. And as we were talking, I could hear a tick. I was thinking, what the fuck? That's not rhythmical enough to be a watch. And I said to him, is your watch broke or whatever? And he goes, oh, I don't wear a watch. What's the tick? Oh, it's my pacemaker.
Oh,
I was like, we've had a 20-minute conversation. You never mentioned you have a
yeah,
pacemaker.
yeah.
I didn't think it was relevant. You're only looking at my arm. I was like, Jesus.
It's funny. There's I know a lot of people they don't tell you everything. I remember working with him years ago, and he came in. I thought he was drunk. I actually thought he was drunk, and the way he was really irrational. And I says, "Have you?" And it was in the morning,
Aye.
and I says, "Sorry, I'm just going to get a wee glass of water here." And I said to the physio next door, who knew him, and he says he hasn't taken his medication. I bet he's diabetic. And he was really, and he wanted to get out and drive the car, and all we had to get get somebody down for him. But you can miss so many things.
And it's
You can
mad.
miss so
Like,
many things. People's are just for a symptom.
yeah.
Um, which even people who have a really low self-esteem or no confidence or the fears and phobias, it's took a while to build that up, hasn't it?
Mhm. Yeah. And it's
So
funny,
it's
like
yeah,
you can miss it even after doing a 20-minute consultation because they don't tell you. So imagine what you're missing when you're just like, jump on that bed there. I'll
yeah,
rub you out. Good
yeah.
luck.
I
Um,
don't do any hands-on now, just with family or friends, but I lost the passion for it. I like to teach it, but I think you have to really love what you do.
yeah.
And I love the psychological work and working with the athletes and stuff. But I just fell out of love with the hands-on because I got to the point where you're just working with one person all the time where I started thinking I can only help one person here in an hour, but with the groups, I can help 30 or 50 people in an hour. You
Yeah.
know?
I would have been the same. You're almost like when I was doing the kinesiology and I did 14 years of it. It's almost like you're going through the motion
Yeah.
of it, and I would be doing the physical whilst mentally doing the mental work anyway. And then I had the
Mm.
same sort of light bulb moment where I was like, what they're really they're getting the kinesiology techniques, but what they're taking away is the psychology stuff.
Yeah.
Why not just like yourself? If I do instead of doing one person, if I do a group of 30 at once, then they can just go to for a massage later and they'll get the
Yeah.
same
I
soft
think,
tissue.
yeah. But even I meet a couple of friends who do martial arts every week, but even when we finish, we just walk on each other, like the Thai stuff, just to finish. So we're all getting work done.
I
keep
like
you
that you
engaged
added
with
like the tie stuff because for people listening, they'd be going, "What?"
Well, don't wear high heels.
I can land it into that class. And what is this part of the class? I was just, we need this bit. This is fine. Um,
Yeah.
so over lockdown, then you pivoted more to teaching coaches, teaching your
Coaching
stuff.
and looking at what I was doing and working on myself, I felt, remember even the last time I flew back from America after doing a workshop, you get that feeling that there's a new chapter coming
Yeah.
and I need to, I've been there and done this thing, I need to pass it on.
Hmm.
I think the coaches, especially the teachers, were very surprised at how much it worked on them as a coach. That's
Yeah.
what blew them away. When I asked them all, they says they got to really understand themselves more and how to develop themselves. Because I think you have to do that. You have to look at all the nitty gritty,
Hmm.
all the stuff that you're hiding from,
Yeah.
and work on it. And there's so much, like it has to be consistent, doesn't it? You can't just stop. You can't
Yeah.
stop working on yourself. Nobody can. Nobody knows it all. Everybody messes up. Everybody falls. The only thing that doesn't fall in life is a snake or a worm. So, and it's you get up and you keep going. That's why the first wee book I wrote, that piece of success, to me, that is, people talk about The Secret and
Yeah.
so well marketed stuff, but we all have a strategy for
Hmm.
success, and it was taught to you by your parents.
Yeah.
If it wasn't your parents, it was whatever peers that brought you up. Um, and it's that you don't start anything until the preparations or the mental preparation. Nobody's going to lift the child off this from sitting on the ground and it's nappy to walk. Nobody.
Yeah.
It's only when standing up against the furniture and moving around, the mental preparations there.
Hmm.
That's when you start. And then you need good people to teach you the skills and support you and pick you up when you fall, because you're going to fall an awful lot. But you'll be persistent as a child because it's fun. There's no fear of
Yeah.
failure.
Yeah.
So when you're picked up, you're supported, and you get this, yay, you'll progress. And when you progress, you associate pleasure to the activity,
Hmm.
and you just keep going. And you're positive as a child as well. So if you're not doing well in anything in life, have you lost the preparation? Is the passion gone? Are you not being persistent in your practice because you don't enjoy it? Are you not supported by the right people? Are you
Hmm.
surrounding yourself with people who are holding you back, pulling you down? So it's the same for anything. If somebody can walk in life, then you have a success strategy that never ever fails.
Yeah.
No matter who you are, what you're doing. Um, and it's back to something everybody can relate to that. So you learn to ride a bicycle, how you learn to roller skate, swim, whatever,
Yeah.
same thing. But yet clever marketing and social media over the years has sucked people into this nonsense that there's some sort of secret out there. And the more expensive it is, then the better it is. And you probably see a lot of people like myself, Liam, who've got themselves in debt over this nonsense, and people
Yeah.
selling them stuff that doesn't work, and they know it doesn't work, and it's just all about the money.
Yeah. And I've had people actually come to me after they've bought courses and they're like, well, what do I do here? I'm in debt. This isn't teaching me how to be successful. What do I do? And I'm like, what do you want me to do here? Like
Yeah,
the
crazy,
the idea
crazy.
of the persistence, that's I don't know anyone that's successful that isn't persistent. And that's what I think a lot of people lack. They want like like you were saying there about your coaches, your coaches learn about themselves. Whereas you go to a lot of different programming, and I've been in a lot of stuff over the years, and I got to the point where people probably hate me being in the room because I'll question it. And it's like they teach you use this technique on your client. What does that do for me? No, no, no. It's just a cookie cutter. We throw that. Like I have a book behind me, the hypnotic scripts, and if I was to believe that book, it would be a case of what's wrong with you? I'm afraid of bats. How long? There we go. And then a script. What's wrong with you? You pee the
Yeah,
bed, no
yeah,
bother. here
A
we
lot
go.
of people do that.
Yeah. Whereas what you're saying there, and it's like even when we did the martial arts massage course, I've been to massage courses and no one's touched anybody.
I know,
And at
I
the
know.
end, they're like, "Here's a certificate." And you're
Sure, there
going,
was years and years ago, there was a job going, God, it must be about 18 years ago. There was a job going in one of the techs to teach sports massage, and I went for the interview. And one of the girls in the panel said to me afterwards, "You had that job until you started running us down the way we thought." But then they were sending people out with no
"What?"
hands-on skills. It was all theory.
Yeah.
But it's, as you know, it's different when you go to Asia. You're just
Hmm.
massaging 8 hours a day and being massaged and constantly worked on. It's like learning a trade. You're
Yeah.
out with the builder or the painter, the spar, and you
Mhm.
do the theory, but you're hands on, hands on.
Yeah. I remember working with a masseuse. A masseuse came to me and said, "Do you want to do swaps? You work with me and I work with you." And I worked with her for the first half hour. And she got off the bed and she's like, this isn't gonna work because if I do what I am trained to do, you're gonna shoot me down here. What you did was amazing. What I do, I'm realizing now I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Because I
Mm.
was explaining why I was doing what I was doing, and this is this, and this is what this is for, and this is why I'm doing this, and how come I'm touching that? This is what this. She's like, I think I just rub people in a sequence. That's what I was taught. And
Yeah,
you're like,
skin polish.
I
God.
in a specific sequence, no matter what's
Yeah.
wrong or what's going on. And like I remember working with a client, and he came in with a sore ankle, and just the way he walked, I started on his hip, and he was like, he was over from England. And he was like, "Look, I have a physio that fixes this every week." I was like, "That should be your first alarm bell."
Yeah.
Fixes this every week. Like, I did the
Yeah.
hip, knee, ankle, and he got up and he went, "Fucking hell, that actually feels good."
Like how many people out there seriously get their upper traps rubbed? They're very tight, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's usually a case of latissimus dorsi has switched off, so the scapula is lifting. This is shortening. They're getting this rubbed instead of finding out what's going on with this. It's usually emotional because it's a spleen muscle,
Mhm.
yeah, spleen, stomach related to the emotion of worry. Most people are worrying. It's not
Wait,
about COVID. They're worried about Russia, worried about debt, oil going up, gas. That's the way life's designed now, to keep everybody in worry and fear, self-doubt, confusion. It's the only way to control millions of people. You
and
know,
whenever
but
you point it out, it's funny. You point out to people, is there anything you're worrying about? They think you're a fucking wizard then. How did you know? You're like, well, your body told me. You're like tuned in, and you're like, well, it's not magic. It's I
yeah.
understand how the body works and how everything's connected and what's going on.
And people won't stop worrying until they experience what it's doing to their system. They have no clue.
Aye.
They have no clue of, and that's what I'd say to people. If you, and anybody can try it out there, take any muscle in the body, pectoris major, clavicular, anterior delts, any leg muscle, close it, hold it, so get it, resist the muscle, and then ask somebody to close their eyes and think about something that's causing worry in their life,
Mhm.
and the muscle will switch off.
Yeah.
But that happens, just you're only asking them to think about it for a couple of seconds. There's people are thinking about that for hours and all day, every day, for weeks, months, and years.
Hmm.
And that is, it's not just switching off their muscles, it's switching down, turning off the immune system.
Yeah. I
And they mightn't, people are not aware consciously that their muscles are switching off, that the body is losing proprioception, the balance and that. So what's the message through the autonomic nervous system going to the head? I'm not strong, so I'm not safe. I'm not safe. There's more stress,
yeah.
internal stress. So it's, I think it's something to be taught in schools, this from P6 or 7 right up.
Yeah.
But again, if they haven't thought about it, if it doesn't tick the box, then no, I don't know.
Yeah. It's one
All
of
you can do
the
is what you do, and keep doing it. But what about you were saying about the martial arts? You still training yourself, Liam?
still training. I injured my back at the start of 20 something. The lockdowns have fucked up my time span, but about a year and a half ago, I injured my back, and I'm just getting back around it now. because when I injured myself, I just went back into old school lame mode, and I was like, "Oh, it's only your back. You can still do your legs and your arms, and all. You'll be fine."
I
And
know.
ruined
Um,
myself more.
when
So
you think of some of the stuff you done years ago, like, even when we boxed, I remember the old coaches, if you had a really bad flu, and you used to go down to the club and you were shaking, they say, get on the bag and sweat it out of
I
you.
sweat it out. Yeah, sweat that out. You'll be grand. Or
have
like,
you have you have you damaged knuckles? Well, you got another hand, haven't you? Get in
yeah,
there and stop complaining.
that was always the thing about martial arts. My arms killing me. Right, we're gonna do sticking hands, but just one arm. Put the arm behind your back. And like, all right, this is this. I'm just not getting out of any of this.
But
I
that's
remember even,
you are learning resilience, aren't you?
yeah, but it's funny, you don't know it at the time. And then
Yeah.
over, like, I remember the first time I ever got punched properly in sparring. Like, a guy just threw a really nice left hook and just caught me in the head. And I stopped. And immediately I thought to myself, my brother hits me harder than this for the crack.
Mm,
Because we used to do WWF. We used to think we were wrestlers, so we thought it was real. If it is
yeah.
real, whatever. We used to batter each other. So when I got hit, and the whole room stopped, because this is a guy. He was a world champion Sandow fighter. He actually then spinning heel kicked me in the back of the neck straight after, because I was still like, I'd never sparred properly, and I was like, ugh.
Mm.
But every time he hit me, I just kept thinking, Sean hits me harder for when we're having a bit of crack. And I remember
Yeah.
when he spin and heel kicked me straight after too, the the master was like, stop, you need to sit down. And I was like, why? I was checking for blood and all. I was like, why? And he was like, you just got spin and heel kicked. And like, is that, I'd never been spin and heel kicked before either. So I was like, is that bad? Is that something that I should sit down for? And they were like, are you all right? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know what to know. But when I look back, I was like, it was all the resilience of me and my brother doing wrestling and camel clutches and Boston crabs. Probably why my back so easily broke when I got older. But now whenever I'm coaching, I try to really keep that at the front of my mind and building resilience. So I don't want you to go away knowing I know how to deal with one specific thing that happens. Like, I used to be afraid of being in a car. I'm not afraid. I know how to deal with cars. I want you to realize this is all interconnected. And if you know how to be resilient, it doesn't matter if it's a car or on a bridge
Mm,
or wherever it is,
yeah.
which,
I think, and I get hands up. I suppose, like most people, when you're young, you get mixed up with mental toughness and mental resilience.
yeah, mental
And
toughness when I
anything
was younger
that
is more
comes too
stupidity.
hard and brittle just breaks.
Yeah. Hmm.
And the resilience, you need to be made of rubber.
Yeah.
You need to, and there's times you need to rest, and don't be afraid to ask people for help.
Yeah.
We get into this. I think a lot of martial arts artists do, and boxers, you get in the mentality, that's a sign of weakness, but it's not. It's a sign of common sense.
Sometimes that goes at the start, I remember doing arm toughening with a guy that was much bigger than me, and my arm just swole out in a big balloon, and I immediately rubbed it out. I was like, I don't like didn't know what I was. I just knew if I rub that away, I'll be able to keep going. And I'm black and blue and still training on, and then driving home, my arm doesn't work. Why is this
Yeah.
not working? Rub that out. And it's like you're saying, you think even that mental toughness, but it was more
Stupidity.
yeah, yeah, you just
No,
keep
but you
going.
do. I think most of us get into martial arts and boxing because you've been bullied in somewhere. You want confidence, so you put up with it. And even looking back, I found the boxing after a couple of hours, school was mad. The beatings, like, and I had my cheekbone fractured, my nose, and my dad sent me down to a boxing club. And them days, there wasn't enough room in the club, and I think about 20 of us went down together. So my old coach Patsy says, right in the ring, and put this big lad, big tall fella. Always remember a bit of a birthmark on his face, and he must have told him the hammers. Noses were bleeding. I had a black ear and all when I went home. Cried my eyes out. Remember thinking to myself, I'm not leaving till I get him back, because I was just fed up with the bullying, in the school
Yeah.
and stuff. Um, and that's what I just boxed from I was 12 to I was 24, more for people just to leave me alone,
Hmm.
you know. Um, But then when I stopped that, the Thai boxing arrived in Belfast. It was like, whoa, I was still boxing when I'd done the Thai as well. But it was a new thing, and you were allowed to kick and knee people, and
Yeah.
the shin conditioning. And then it was like most of us at the martial arts, come on, we'll all get a job in the door because we're tough guys.
Yeah.
It was more a bit of a bantering session at the weekend. And one of my friends, Paul Devaney, and Paul was great at Wing Chun, and he brought a magazine in one time. I'd been training with Chinese man Albert Wong, who was a bamboo chamber praying mantis master. Then he stopped the class. So Paul says to me, what about this guy in London here? He's been staying in Hong Kong 6 months of every year from he was, I think, 15 or 16. And it was my seafood, Paul Whitrood. So I just got a ticket, went to London. I'd never been there before. Looked, I remember when I walked in, he was actually had a big, it was like a Chinese wok full of sand and a round stone in it. And he was beating it with one knuckle onto the sand, then lifting it up again. And so I thought it was quite tough, and asked him could I take a private lesson. And he'd done some of the bone conditioning. I just wanted to vomit. I never felt anything like it. He was hitting me. I thought it was like somebody was hitting me in the hand with a sledgehammer. It was just vibrating right down into me. And then he beat the arms of me. And he says, if you want to come back, then come back. And that was it. He hardly spoke to me. He didn't really, in them days, the classes were really tough. He hardly spoke to me for 3 years. I was going back and forth, back and forth. Good friends now. He taught me the Chinese medicine. And I'm going over 29 years now. I like to get back over and see all my friends I grew up training with. I'm a teacher, but don't train the way I used to.
You couldn't.
Really, really hard. And then you talk about black and blue, like days I couldn't walk back to get the train.
Yeah.
And then you're at it the next day again. And you just rub it that Dajjal medicine around your body.
Yeah.
But I was on a journey of building a shell around myself, trying to make myself, even I remember classes, I broke my ribs. I was still taking my own classes in the Conway Mill. Wasn't seeing it as a weakness not to go.
Yeah.
Dislocated thumbs hanging out halfway through the class. Remember dislocating the thumb out of the socket. I'll go to the hospital after the class. Not going.
Yeah.
Saying a weakness. And then you that's why I went to Singapore and done the big firewalk in the Mariamman Temple. And I was on that journey of how can I put myself through more pain? How can I make myself tougher and tougher and tougher mentally, physically? And then that sort of peaked the year 2000. Then I was managing the fitness suite and running the sports injury clinic in Royal Mail House. My martial arts school going, everything was great. And then it was my wee brother took his own life, and that's life hitting you harder than anybody will ever hit. Nothing prepares you for that. You can't hit back.
No.
And that's where you need to have that emotional intelligence and support around you.
Yeah, that's when you learn because when you're telling that story, that it just there's so many parts of it that people who know me will be listening and going, all right, so Liam isn't mental. Because I had my rib broken in a class, and it was a wrestling class, and I continued on and wrestled, finished the rounds, broken rib, be fine, then went to get it checked out after. So people think it's mad, but it is when you're in that mindset of that's showing weakness and I'm tough, and the more like steel being battered to be turned into a sword, you're like, that's me, I'm being turned into a weapon. And then, like you said, life happens and your brain goes.
It's chapters you go through in your life, isn't it? Everybody has their different chapters and different things. Even with after Singapore, like it's one of the biggest firewalks in Asia, and there's a lot of stuff you do before it, that's really mentally tough. And I had no skin in my feet really, and they were all blistered before I walked on the fire because of the preparations before walking around the streets of Singapore in the midday sun and stuff. But I was chatting to a lady when I come home about it. She was saying, oh God, how do you do that? So tough and all. I could never do anything like that. I said, you could. It's 2000, I think 2000 Indians done it on the day. It was the first Westerner to ever do it from its beginnings in 1840. But I says, if that was only one day of pain, 1 or 2 days, I says, there's people sitting in the hospice for months with their children. There's people who are living pain every single day of their life. You know what I mean? So it's hard if you're comparing it to your comfort zone. But if you're comparing it to some other people out there who, every day they're getting up, it's like climbing Everest. So they're the people that, again, in society, they don't get the recognition on social media. Nobody looks up to them. Nobody gets excited when you talk about them. But they are, to me, they're the real heroes out there.
Yeah, it's so. I'll say to all my clients that today you might literally climb Everest, or today you might get out of bed, and there'll be just as big achievements because of how you feel in the moment of doing it. And it's recognizing that the small mini wins are just as important as the big crazy wins, because you're developing that ability to go, well, I can do what I thought I couldn't do, even if it is making yourself a meal, like whatever it happens to be. And like you said, the social media, if you posted, I got out of bed today within 10 minutes instead of 2 hours like yesterday, people will go, oh, I got out of bed at 6 o'clock and I was showered, a cool shower. Then I went for a cool run around. Like, they'll name all the shit that they did. And you're like, that's not the point. The point is, like, if you're not challenging, your challenge is different than my challenge. So when people tell me, if my challenge was getting out of bed in the morning, and they're like, I get up and run a 5K every day. Why didn't you run 15K? Too hard. Well, that's what it feels like for them, getting out of bed.
Yeah.
So tomorrow when you get up, run a marathon for the crack, and then tell me what you've done. Sean, I'm very wary of your time there, because I'm supposed to keep an eye on time and I'm terrible at it. So I'll keep talking to you forever if we just keep going. So hopefully you'll just come back someday. Where would be, so we've talked about a lot of different things. I would love for people who want to be coaches in anything, that want to further the development, to reach out to you, because that's, like, I know what you deliver. I've seen your talks, I've read the book, I've seen, like, you started up your YouTube again, which is good. So people,
I'm terrible on social media. I run at it, then adrift, and then somebody say, you haven't done a YouTube in a while, and go, oh yeah.
And then you come back to it. Yeah. It's difficult. Like, I actually have to I had to sit myself down and schedule it. Like, Mondays are my YouTube, or my scheduling days. And even at that, like, I'll drift as well, and people do the same. I thought you were doing this. And I'm like, yeah, it's technical issues.
Yeah.
I technically forgot. So where do people find
the child, the sweetie shop?
Yeah, that is so much. Go on ahead.
Thanks for your time anyway, and we'll have to tie up soon for a coffee.
That will be great. Where do people find you, though, before we start arranging our meetups? Where's the best?
SeanConnolly.info.
Cool.
You can get me through the website, SeanConnolly.info.
I'll link everything up just to be sure as well. Sean, I really appreciate it. I love our conversations, and I know everyone else will as well. For everyone watching and listening, thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.